This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. When the Browns traded Myles Garrett, what they effectively said was that this last era of the last 5 years, some success, some of this franchise's best success since coming back in 1999, the 11-5 seasons, that era is truly over and done with, right? All the people you associate with that era of football, they're gone. No Myles, no Nick Chubb. Baker Mayfield's gone. He's been gone, right? The Deshaun Watson thing, he's on his way out, right? We are starting a new era of football that's going to be based on this new crop of players that they have right now and probably a new quarterback next year, right? But they have moved on from this era and they're moving on to the next era. Now, I was watching The Right Time with Bomani Jones on the Wave Network, and he had made a point about this trade that I thought was an interesting parallel to this trade that not many other people have brought up. So I want to give Bomani the credit for that. Let's go ahead and play his clip from his podcast, The Right Time.
And so they get their heat in the time while we wait on the NBA to get going. And we had, all right, I was going to say not one, but two monster trades, but one of them is a monster. The other one, I guess it's still a monster if you knew it was coming, but we'll start with the big monster, which is Myles Garrett is going to the Rams, and the Rams traded Jared Verse, a first-round pick in 2027, was around a second-round pick in 2028. Like, it's a gang of shit.
Yeah, it's the most NBA trade I've ever seen in the NFL, where it's like you're taking an established star and then getting a young star at the same position and a couple other picks.
Yeah, but I mean, this isn't terribly dissimilar to what the Rams did when they acquired Matthew Stafford.
Right.
Like, you may be down on Jared Goff, but Jared Goff has been the starter for the Lions since he got there, and they haven't, I mean, this will be going on year 6.
Yeah.
And they haven't really tried to get anybody else to replace him, right? It's a very similar thing in what they did to get Garrett. And I mean, obviously, the idea of Myles Garrett playing for the Rams is terrifying.
All right, so that's the parallel that I thought was interesting that Bomani brought up, right? The Jared Goff trade to this Browns trade with Myles Garrett. You know, similar parallels can be brought up. Team swapping two players at the same position, somebody getting a Pro Bowl caliber player back while also getting draft picks, and another team shipping out one of their best players in franchise history to another team who's trying to win right now. Now, it is worth noting that, you know, the Detroit Lions got back more from Matthew Stafford technically than the Browns did. The Lions got Jared Goff, a third-round pick that year, a first-round pick in 2022, and a first-round pick in 2023. So they got 2 first-round picks plus the swap of player, which in order for the trade that the Browns have to make sense in that framework, you would have to value Jared Verse, an edge rusher, much more than you would value Jared Goff, but you're also, you know, trading an edge rusher. So it's a similar trade on those grounds, right? Yeah, obviously quarterbacks, edge rushers carry different price tags. I would make the argument Myles is better at his position than Matthew Stafford was at his position. Like, Matthew Stafford is a really, 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 really good quarterback, an all-pro caliber quarterback, but never really seen as like the best quarterback of his generation, where you could say that is the case for Myles Garrett on his entire side of the ball. But again, quarterback tax, however you want to factor it in, whatever math goes there. I'm pretty sure the Browns wanted to get back 2 first-round picks, right? Like, everything indicates that the Browns tried to get 2 first-round picks back. And if the Browns did get 2 first-round picks back plus Jared Verse, that would go a long way for me to justify the moving on from Myles Garrett. But I don't really want to get fixated on that again. What I do want to talk about is what happened with that trade, right? Obviously, the Rams were justified in making the trade for Matthew Stafford because Matthew Stafford was undoubtedly part of getting them over the hump and winning the Super Bowl in LA. And I think the Rams are thinking to themselves, we're going to do it again, right? They're going to trade for Myles Garrett. They're going to win the Super Bowl in LA. He's going to be a big part of it. And I've talked about this before. I think that's a good plan if you're LA. Because as Matthew Stafford gets older, as your future at quarterback gets more uncertain, if you're a team like the Rams, right? You don't know what Ty Simpson's going to be. You invested a lot in him. You have Matthew Stafford. A quarterback's best friend is always going to be an elite defense. If you want to win while your quarterback play is declining, if you want to open up the same windows that were available to you when Matt Stafford was at the top of his game, and he's not really far off from the top of his game, if we're being honest, but if you want to keep the window open from Matt Stafford being at the top of his game to his game falling off a little bit as he gets older, you're going to need the defense to rise with that. And the Rams had a good defense last year, but they didn't have an elite defense, one of the defenses that we were talking about all year, right? They were just a good defense. Well, getting Myles Garrett makes you go from good defense to one of those defenses. They bring back Aaron Donald, who knows what can happen. But that makes a lot of sense for the Rams. I think it's going to be something to where it could get them over the hump, and they could do what they did with the Matt Stafford trade, where they won a Super Bowl with it. Now, on the flip side, the promise of the Browns part of this trade, right? If we're comparing it, which I think Les Snead did this, I think Andrew Berry did this, if we're comparing this to the framework of the Jared Goff deal, the Rams are saying, hey, we know you're losing Myles Garrett. We'll give you something that can at least not be the same thing as Myles Garrett, obviously, but can potentially satisfy your appetite that would be left open from not having Myles Garrett, right? Jared Goff wasn't Matthew Stafford. He still isn't Matthew Stafford. There has not been a season that has passed, despite the fact that Matt Stafford is way older than Jared Goff, where Jared Goff has been a better quarterback than Matt Stafford. These are things that aren't really controversial to say, right? But Detroit has not had a need at quarterback. It's not as good as having Matt Stafford. You can make the argument that if Detroit would have kept Matt Stafford and still get, some of the hires that they have around there that facilitated the change, maybe they don't get as bad to get an Aiden Hutchinson or whatever it is. But, if that same team had Matthew Stafford that they have right now, then Detroit's ceiling would probably be higher right now. But nonetheless, they made the move. They moved on. Jared Goff helped them move on. The Browns' hope is that Jared Verse is a strong enough edge, which his career indicates that he should probably be, for a long enough time. 26 years old, 25 years old, turning 26 this season, that he should be able to feel the appetite for edge. So, no, we don't have Myles Garrett, but also we aren't looking to draft a edge in the top 5 because we desperately need a replacement for Myles Garrett. Or we're not signing somebody to 40, well, not 40, it would be way more than that, like $60 million a year because we're desperate to replace Myles Garrett or making some kind of panic move. We have our appetite filled for the replacement of Myles Garrett, and we have picks. Now, again, Jared Goff, Matt Stafford trade, the Detroit Pistons. My head's still in NBA playoff mode. But the Detroit Lions did come away with more from a draft pick standpoint, right? They got 2 first-round picks and a third. The Browns got 1 first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick. So that is a big difference. So if you're Cleveland and you want this trade to be a success, you kind of want to do what Detroit did. I think Detroit is the blueprint for trading a big-time player like a Matthew Stafford. Obviously, that player is going to be good somewhere else. and how you can end up in that situation or end up out of that situation not embarrassing yourself. We're going to talk more about this, but first I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a fun way to earn cash while you watch your favorite teams. No complex betting rules, just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. Here are my picks for this upcoming season, AFC North edition. Jimmy Bernard, I have less than 475. This has to do with volume available in Pittsburgh's offense. Quincy Judkins, I have over 975. Browns improved line. I think the run game's going to be better with it. Chase Brown, under 900 yards. Joe Burrow equals less rushing yards usually for the Bengals offense. Mark Andrews, more than 475 yards. Lamar's going to need a safety blanket. Check to see if PrizePicks is available in your state. You could follow me on the app at Quinn_C to see all my lineups. Download the PrizePicks app today. Play $5 and get $50 in lineup to download the app using the link in the description. Now, one of the parts of fortune that the Lions got, right, is that the year after the Rams won the Super Bowl, they were bad. They had all these injuries. That was the year where Baker Mayfield ended up on the Los Angeles Rams. And basically they had netted them what people thought would be 2 late first-round picks. That second year actually turned out to be the 6th pick in the draft. Which is interesting, right? And part of why I wanted the Browns to get multiple first-round picks, because you never know, right? The further out what the impact could be, the more time you give yourself to cash in on first-round picks and the more first-round picks you have to cash in on a trade, the more likely it is that you could get lucky like Detroit did there, because getting that 6th pick allowed them to make a bunch of trade backs, get some extra picks, get some extra second-round picks. It allowed them a lot of versatility to be able to make the moves that they made to get them into that era. And look, the Browns have to follow the Detroit playbook. That's no doubt about it. That's how they get out of this whole Myles Garrett trade, and they end it with a success story. But in order to do that, they're going to have a lot of things go right for them. They're going to have to get lucky in some ways. They're going to have a lot of players develop around them. They're going to need almost everybody involved with this defense to be better than they were last year, Jared Verse included. But the big question mark here for Cleveland is quarterback. Now, I don't really see how this trade can net the Browns a quarterback, at least one that you would have to take in the top 3 of the draft, right? Maybe if we're talking about a trade up in the middle of the draft, then the picks that we got from LA start to become more important. But for now, I don't think we're going to use that late first as the big selling piece to get the whoever has the choice to get Arch Manning or Dante Moore to trade them to us, right? More would have to happen. The Browns would have to have a pick that's close to whoever's picking at the top. So we would also have to have a top 3 pick to swap with. Like, a lot of things would have to be really specific in order for that trade to really net you a quarterback. So I'm not going to bend the hopes of that trade on the far-fetched ability for it to get you a quarterback. But what you do want this trade to be is responsible, of the 3 picks that you have out there. You want one of those picks to be a Pro Bowl level player, and you want another pick to be solid. You want basically 2 players you feel like you're adding to your core as you go forward, plus Jared Verse. And if you can do that, right, I think you could walk away from this trade, as tough as it is to trade a guy like Myles Garrett, and as impactful as it will be to trade somebody like Myles Garrett. I think you can walk out of it, maybe not better, right? Detroit hasn't won a championship, but what Detroit is better than what they've been, right? Like with Matt Stafford, they got to like a playoff run. They never got to a conference championship. A lot of that wasn't Matt Stafford's fault, we found out. A lot of that was the incompetence that Matt Stafford had to deal with, or just the straight up run of bad luck that Detroit had at that time, right? So it's not like it's Matt Stafford's fault they couldn't get that far. But if you could build something in the shadow of that trade that could get you further than you got with Matt Stafford, then you're going to walk away with it and say, hey, it happened. You're happy with this, or you're as happy as you could be with this. The same thing's true with the Myles Garrett trade. Ultimately, at the end of the day, as frustrated as I am with the trade, Myles Garrett and the Browns only got to the second round. They never got any further than the second round with that crew. So if they can build something out the ashes of this that can get to a conference championship, people will widely look at it as a success. We will see if the Browns can get to that point, because it's going to be very difficult without a guy like Myles to build a team that can get to that point, especially when we don't have a quarterback. But that's the finish line, right? If you're looking for what the finish line is for a victory on this trade, if you're looking for what the goal, right? So we're not talking about goalposts moving. So the goal for a good outcome on this Myles Garrett trade, that's the goal, right? Hey, collectively, with everything that we got, maybe we can go further than the second round. It's not impossible, but it will be difficult, and it won't be easy. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.